And Gurudev, he in his classes he also mentioned the importance of Siksha Guru. The Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami and Chaitanya Charitamrita glorifies and mentions his gurus. Well, we don't even know who the Diksha Guru is of Krishnadas Kaviraj. But he mentions Rupa and Sanatan, Rupa and Raghunath at the end of every chapter. So there's an emphasis to be made on the principle of Siksha Guru. So Gurudev was trying to make this clear so that there wouldn't be just a personality cult. Because we all had great love and respect for Prabhupada. And when we left for Narayan Raj to hear from him, people blasphemed us and said, "Oh, you're leaving Prabhupada. You're making an offense." But this wasn't the case, And the principle is that we should continue to hear, from elevated Vaishnavas. Always. Krishna Bhakti Mula Haya Sarasanga. The root of Bhakti is Sarasanga. And even when Krishna Prema arises, Krishna Prema Taya Purnamukha Anga, the principle of Sarasanga is even more, just as much as important. Even when you have Krishna Prema. According to Krishnadas Kaviraj. So, Gurudev would emphasize in his classes that your Siksha Guru is like your bosom buddy. He's more intimate with you. You can be friends with him. And he will glorify and give you more faith in your own Diksha Guru. So this is an important principle because after Gurudev left, some people have gone a little off the track and taken Siksha from certain acharyas or sadhus who don't have that connection with their Diksha Guru. But Gurudev himself was always glorifying Prabhupada. Especially whenever he arrived at a new city or a new place, first class, always glorifying Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And yet, my God brothers, many of them were all looking for faults. We have to find a fault with this person in order to keep people from going to him. So they were saying things like, oh, he had some ladies washing his feet. Or somebody put this lecture up and made it publicized on this one website where we're discussing many things in controversy. So that one particular lecture Gurudev gave in Amsterdam, I believe, he was talking about a verse from Canto 9, chapter 9, verse 32 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Mami pati yepishu papionio, striya vaisatra shudras depi mami antimamapi. That even those who are considered of a sinful birth. And then he said, women, Vaishyas, Sudras, etc., can approach and achieve the Lord and achieve the supreme destination. So, the whole lecture, it seemed like Gurudev wanted to make an amend with the women, and also maybe people who have, of colored skin. And many of my God sisters, they also had objected to the way Prabhupada had seemed to have denigrated the female sex in certain words, like less intelligent or having only 32 ounces of brain substance. So they were thinking that Krishna consciousness was, a patriarchal system, averse to females, and so some of them left. So Gurudev didn't want this, so he said this verse has a hyphen where there should be a comma. In other words, the women shouldn't be classified amongst the sinful with a hyphen. There should be a comma to show that those who are, considered in a lower position can achieve the highest position. And of course, Gurudev emphasized that a devotee is a devotee. He's not of any particular sex, or in one sense, he's transcendental to all material considerations, whether female or male or whatever, old or young. And then he said, my Shamrani, our Shamrani, is she less intelligent? Anyway, he said so many things to try to kind of bridge a gap between those who were thinking Krishna consciousness was, you call it misogynist, those who are prejudiced against the opposite sex. But this devotee took it in a different context, and somehow he said, Prabhupada is Gurudev is blaspheming Prabhupada. And I was thinking, how could he say that? So I went through the text again, and the video. And now Gurudev also said, unless you're actually there with the person speaking, like you can see something written, or maybe even hear an audio. But if you see a video, it's almost getting close to the actual speaking. But only if you're in front of the Sadguru, and that Sabda is coming through, are you going to get something real. And then, on top of that, really, you have to be submissive and surrendered. And that's what, the Sadguru is looking. Somebody who's submissive and surrendered is going to inject into that heart some powerful, transcendental bhav. And this is what we felt, devotees were overwhelmed because they were surrendering their hearts and soul. Gurudev said, I'm taking your hearts and I'm going to put it in my pocket, and there I'll keep it. So the people who are outside, they're like bees buzzing around the jar of honey. They can't get inside, they can't taste the nectar, and really they're envious of devotees. So they said things like this, Gurudev is blaspheming Prabhupada. And so there was a whole rift going on in the early years of trying to show how Gurudev was your friend, your best friend. He's glorifying Prabhupada, and he's giving you an opportunity to better understand your own Guru. Like Gurudev said, I have the lock and key to Prabhupada's books. You can read Prabhupada's books, but I have the key. And he said, I'm the only successor. There's no other successor to your Prabhupada than me. So they took more offense when Gurudev said that. Because they were so blind. and overwhelmed by ignorance, not even realize they're creating a personality cult out of our acharya. And one devotee, Ramia, came to Florida. I said, come on, you're my godbrother, you should meet Narayan Maharaj. He said, no, it's okay. I said, what do you mean, you're here in the house, he's 10 feet away, you don't want to see him? What's wrong with you? I couldn't quite figure it out. So he agreed, and then when he came and offered his respects, then Gurudeva asked him, well, how are you? And you okay? He said, yeah, I'm okay, but I'm just with Prabhupada. I'm just staying with Prabhupada. So Gurudeva asked him, well, do you love your father? Of course. And what about your uncle? Oh yeah. And your aunts, you love them also? Yeah. So, Prabhupada may be your father, I'm like your uncle, you can't have love for me? So he thought of it, but his heart couldn't change, There's two spiritually conditioned,
When I took initiation, he said you should think of me as non-different, Guru's non-different, so you should think of me in one sense, you can think of me like Srila Gurudeva Maharaj, and he said, I will hold your hand as you're going in your path, he said, but you're the one that has to walk. And he said, and sometimes I'll have to chastise you, maybe very heavily. So yeah, he did definitely do that a lot. But it was always warranted, because I was always doing something wrong. Like one time I heard, actually, when I went back to the West, how if you don't chant your mantras properly for some time, then maybe your mantras were finished, someone was saying. So I became a little bit scared, maybe my initiations doesn't work anymore, maybe my mantras aren't working anymore. So I went to him and then I explained, maybe 3 days, I'm not quite sure, maybe 2 days, 3 days, I wasn't chanting properly. And then he repeated the Maha Mantra to me, and I repeated back. And then I said, but Gurudev, I've got Diksha, and he was like, what? You have Diksha and you didn't chant your mantras? And I was like, no. And he was like furious, he was fuming, he was so angry. And then he asked me to repeat some mantras, and I couldn't remember I couldn't even remember my own name, I think, if he asked me at that time. And then he was going, you can't even remember anything, what's wrong with you? And then he really started going crazy, he was shouting at me, and after he finished, he goes, now get out of my room, like that. And then I crawled out of my room on all fours, out of the room, and I was like shaking. And then afterwards, one sannyasi came up to me, and he was like looking really worried, and he's like, oh my God, I've never seen Gurudev like so angry ever, and I was like, oh, but I was kind of relieved a little bit as well, because I thought, he's not rejecting me, and he told me, you make one feast for all the devotees and feed all the Vaishnavas. And then afterwards I told Prabhuji, I said, oh, Gurudev said I have to make a feast for all the Vaishnavas and feed everyone. And Prabhuji kind of like had some sort of like a knowing smile, and he said, yes, Gurudev is very clever, So he's somehow or another, he was saying, this is very good for you. So then I made this feast, and then I served everybody as well. I think I'm in very few pictures of Gurudev, and that's because I'd always be very far from Gurudev when he would speak. Because I was always so scared of Gurudev. And also as well, I always felt like everybody else is a devotee and I'm not a devotee. So when I'm in a like association with devotees, and I always feel like I shouldn't be there, because like I'm not a Vaishnava. And so I kind of just generally stay away from Gurudev for that reason, but I never felt like it was like a bad thing they were chastising me at the time. Obviously I wasn't enjoying it, but I was glad that at least he's got this, because I can understand from Srila Gurudeva Maharaj, if the Guru chastises you, actually it's not a bad thing, it's actually he's cutting your your attachments, and,
Gurudev mood was in India, more was observed. Like on the West, when he going on the West, he was more like Nityananda Prabhu, he was speaking and this and that. But when he just was in India, he was like completely observed. And in India, Gurudev like given so much for me this impression. I remember like the time when we was in Govardhan, and just Gurudev was like, he's supposed to, after all parikram, like Navadvip parikrama, he's supposed to go Govardhan and also to spend time here in Govardhan. And just he's so much showing that Govardhan is our eternal place. And I remember one time I was late for their parikrama on the Vrindavan. I'm just missed 2 weeks and only coming for 2 weeks and Govardhan. And I remember when I just arrived, this time was Nukud Mahamahotsava, and we all going to their, all people going to Govardhan giving different types of presentation. And I just arrived and I was want to see Gurudev, speak with him and just giving some gifts and this and that. But when I see him, those things he just telling me go and just worship in Govardhan. And by this mood, he just showing how much important, how much important he's showing this Govardhan. This is his heart. And this was my personal experience. And also I remember the time when Gurudev was in Govardhan, he was so much observed, and sometimes he not giving any hari-katha, he only morning and evening he just doing parikrama, going some places nearby, just chanting and just coming back. Sometimes in our mat, he's just doing parikrama in front of this lotus. Remember this lotus in Giridhari Govidya mat. So and I didn't know, the time I was just quite new and didn't know that Gurudev going every day, some places. And I just remember one time also went to just chant my Harinam, and it was so interesting. When I just coming back, from one place, I'm just going and I just see Gurudev with Mother Maharaj and Vrajanath Prabhu, they just coming to me and they just going. And that time Gurudev was completely not in his external consciousness, he was completely inside, and his eyes was not even looking at you, he was completely in his Antardasha, I think. And it was very interesting experience that Gurudev showing that not spending your time for these external things. Be in your heart, doing Harinam, doing your meditation. Even when I see this darshan, no need to even speak. You just see. This is Gurudev giving an example. How much you have to be observed. And the time Vrajanath Prabhu and Madhava Maharaj, they're telling me not even tell anything. You just slowly go and not even disturb Gurudev mood, because I was feeling that he was in some special meditation.